I want to show our viewers something that our colleague Josh Campbell just pointed out to me, and I believe we have it. It's new merch. All the campaigns get merch up really quickly. But this in particular, as Josh is pointing out, is in orange, blaze orange. It's a color used by hunters for safety purposes. And that's what Tim Walz is. He is a hunter. And the fact that that is one of the first things that they are selling, that tells you a lot about the way that they are trying to get the white men.
I might get one. That's not
So the Democratic Party is losing male voters, and they don't know why. They are completely scrambling to try to figure out what they can do to get these male voters back. And you might notice that I got my camouflage Donald Trump 2024 hat on, and you'll see why here in just a minute. And in this one, Matt Walsh breaks down some of the reasons why the Democratic Party is bleeding male voters at such an astronomical rate. This was a topic that I really wanted to show you guys because I actually went into this on my live show last Saturday with my co-host Atlas Thugged. And just in case you guys don't know, we do go live every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a podcast called the Jar Openers Podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. Stop in, engage in the conversation, because I'm trying to build the America First culture here on the channel. And I'd love to answer any questions and just engage in general chat with you guys. But let's go ahead and get this one started.
It's been a little over 2 months since the Kamala Harris campaign unveiled their ace in the hole, their foolproof plan to win over male voters and dominate the upcoming presidential election. This plan didn't take the form of a campaign platform or a stump speech or anything like that. Instead, it took the form of an ingenious little totem, one that you could even purchase for a mere $40 plus shipping, that was located in the online merch store of the Kamala Harris campaign. And I'm talking, of course, about the official Harris-Walz embroidered camo hat. Axios called the hat a status symbol for Democrats. This hat, Politico told us, is more important than you think. They wrote that it could even decide the outcome of the election as a kind of tipping point. According to CNN, that hat signified that the Harris campaign was serious about burnishing their credentials among young voters, especially white men. Watch.
I want to show our viewers something that our colleague Josh Campbell just pointed out to me, and I believe we have it. It's new merch. All the campaigns get merch up really quickly. But this in particular, as Josh is pointing out, is in orange, blaze orange. It's a color used by hunters for safety purposes. And that's what Tim Walz is. He is a hunter. And the fact that that is one of the first things that they are selling, that tells you a lot about the way that they are trying to get the white men.
I might get one. That's not there's a way to style that hat that could fit in with the culture, you know?
So there was so much optimism. Tim Walz is a hunter, CNN assured us. That's why he needs the blaze orange hat. And thanks to this hat, men are going to recognize how authentic and masculine Tim Walz is. Men will sit around at the pub saying to each other, gee whiz, that Tim Walz he's a real man's man. Did you see his orange hat? Trump campaign won't even stand a chance. After all, their hats are red, and men don't respond to that. They only respond to blaze orange. Now, that was the consensus in the corporate press anyway, but 2 months later, it's starting to look like the unthinkable has happened. The Harris-Walz camo hat has not, in fact, exerted a kind of mind control over hundreds of thousands of men across the country. It has not guaranteed a Kamala Harris landslide, as expected. Instead, Kamala Harris's campaign is in free fall among men of every demographic group. A New York Times poll just found that nationally, Trump has a significant lead among likely male voters. He's up by more than 10 points. Meanwhile, a USA Today poll found that in Arizona, a majority of Latino men between the ages of 18 to 34 support Donald Trump. Among Latino men aged 45 to 49, Trump support is even higher at 57%. And for their part, black men are also increasingly turned off by Kamala Harris's campaign. New York Times reports that Kamala Harris, quote, still significantly trails Joe Biden's 2020 share of likely black voters. And the numbers show that she's especially far behind among black men. And you know what that means? Well, it means that Barack Obama is once again very disappointed. Now, it's no secret that a lot of things disappoint Barack Obama. He was disappointed when George Zimmerman exercised his right of self-defense to save his life. He was disappointed when Americans elected Donald Trump. He was disappointed when he had to cancel his 60th birthday party on Martha's Vineyard because the plebes noticed that he was disregarding the COVID rules that he pretended to care about. Pretty much everything that happens somehow ends up disappointing poor Barack Obama. But this time is different. His brow is really furrowed this time. He's more disappointed than he's ever been before. And specifically, he's disappointed in black men for not supporting Kamala Harris enough. Watch.
Barack Obama is back on the campaign trail and he's making the case against Donald Trump. But before his guest feature in Pennsylvania, Obama made a surprise visit to Kamala Harris's campaign headquarters in Pittsburgh. It was there that he got candid, maybe a little too candid if you are in the vice president's inner circle tonight. He warned that Harris is underperforming him with black voters, and he had a message specifically for black men.
Part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. And so now you're thinking about sitting out or even supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable.
And before Matt continues, I'll just say, Barack Obama, you let the black community down yourself. You were elected twice. You were president for 8 years. And the majority of the black community, when your 8 years was up, believed that you did nothing for them. As a matter of fact, a lot of people across America, black and white, believe that your rhetoric increased racial tension. So how are you going to come out here and act like it's Kamala's fault? You know, a lot of people have forgotten that. But I remember those days. I remember listening to Rush Limbaugh and hearing people call in and saying, look, I have to vote for Barack Obama. There's no way that I can tell my grandchild that I didn't vote for the first black president, right? So they were literally voting for you because they were black and because you were black. And they feared the repercussions from within their own community, essentially. And then you let them down. I mean, come on, bro. Like, seriously. I love that Barack Obama did this, though, because honestly, it just exposes the Democrats for what they are. And he insulted a lot of black men. He insulted a lot of men, period, with this comment. Because thinking that people won't support Kamala Harris simply because she's a woman is completely disingenuous, and it's bullshit. I mean, people don't like Kamala Harris because she's a part of the Biden administration. She fails every single interview that she does. And not only that, in one of her recent interviews on The View, she completely co-signed to everything Joe Biden has done. So this administration is effectively the Kamala administration as well, because she was asked, what would you have done differently? And she said, nothing. I would support Joe Biden. I supported Joe Biden with every decision that he made. So, you know, when she was given the opportunity, she's not even smart enough to, separate herself when given the opportunity. And she has no reason to be loyal to Joe Biden at this point. Biden's out and she's in as far as the candidate goes. And yet she's still not smart enough to figure it out. That she had that opportunity. They gave her a layup and she missed it. So
not acceptable, he says. Just not acceptable. This is, and you get the finger wag too, the literal finger wag. That's not acceptable. This is how you know the internal polls are just as bad as the public polls, if not worse. The party of joy is now the party of scolding and finger wagging. And it's been that party all along. He's not even hiding his contempt. According to Barack Obama, black men can't possibly be upset with inflation or crime or anything like that. They must hate women. That's the only possible explanation for why Kamala Harris hasn't already locked up 100% of the black vote. Now, what's extraordinary about this is that Donald Trump isn't even polling especially well among black voters. He's just polling a lot better than any other Republican has in recent history. Trump has something like 20% support among black men, which is much higher than Democrats are used to. Still a small minority. But Democrats recognize that this relatively small shift could very well cost them the election. It could flip states like Pennsylvania, which is where Obama was when he delivered that little dressing down. So Obama is furious. He needs black support for Kamala Harris to exceed 90%. But men of all demographic groups aren't going along with the program. And that's why in recent days we've seen Kamala's campaign and her supporters go to increasingly desperate lengths to appeal to men. That cringy ad that went viral last week is just the latest example. It was created by a former director for Jimmy Kimmel named Jacob Reed. And in case you were fortunate enough to miss this at the time when we played it last week, well, here it is again.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
Now, it probably won't surprise you to learn that all of the men in this ad are actors, and they're mostly lying about their lives. One of them says that he braids his daughter's hair, but he doesn't even have a daughter, apparently. He also claims that he deadlifts 500. We can only assume he meant 500 ounces from the look of it. But something that might surprise you is that in the days since this video has been mocked extensively all over the internet, the creator of that ad, Jacob Reed, has not gone into hiding. He hasn't changed his name and fled the country in shame, never to be heard from again, although that reaction would be reasonable and prudent at this point.
And briefly, I just wanted to ask you guys, what was your initial reaction to that video, that ad that you just saw that he just played? Mine was, these dudes are all gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, okay, Seinfeld reference, but seriously, these dudes come off as very feminine, not masculine, and just completely disingenuous. And then I read through the biographies, I guess is what you would call it, of these people, and found out that they all are actors. Some of these dudes don't have kids, like Matt Walsh said, and it's just a complete fake lie right in your face. And that's important to distinguish, because that's what the Democrats are doing right now. They're pulling out all the stops, and they won't stop short of lying directly to your face to try to get you, to try to fool the people into voting for them so that they can have the power. And that's what the Democrats want more than anything. They want to have the power that belongs in the hands of the people, which is why Donald Trump is our champion, because he actually gives that power to the people, unless the states be states, and resists being the dictator that all the Democrats call for him to be. Like, for one example, real quick, I have friends, I know people that blame Trump for allowing the COVID lockdowns to happen, for allowing the Chaz Chop to happen. And it's like, that's not what a president does. That's not, it's on the states to govern and manage themselves. If Donald Trump would have dictated to all the states that they can't lock down, that is exactly what it is, dictator, being a dictator. And so they're crazy. They call him a dictator, but then they call for him to be a dictator and try to shame him when he wasn't a dictator when the opportunity presented itself. And so that's just, my point is, these people are hypocrites. They don't even know what they want. They just say and lie and do anything that they think will help their cause to fool you and trick you into voting for their party and their candidate. They make you more scared of Donald Trump rather than say that Kamala Harris is going to be our champion, and here's why. She's so good because here's why. It doesn't happen. It's not even in the realm of possibility, because they know that their lack of principles and that their way of life doesn't align with the majority of the people. And the reality is that the people have more in common and are way more tolerable of each other and their lifestyles than the Democratic mainstream media would have you believe, even Barack Obama himself, right? And so anyways, let's continue.
Instead, he just appeared on national television to double down on the concept and explain why everyone else misunderstands his marketing genius. Watch.
A Rorschach test and everyone wondering what they're seeing here. But what was your intention in creating this parody and the substance of the message?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I think about masculinity a lot because I'm a dad now raising kids. And I think in this country, it's something we don't talk about a lot. And so I had this idea watching the back-to-back conventions where at the Democratic convention, there's men who are looking at the women who they work with or who they're in relationships with admiration and respect. At the Republican National Convention, you have, you know, everything's about size, crowd size, this size, that size. You're playing Macho Man. Literally, Hulk Hogan is ripping his shirt off. I mean, it was such a cartoon of masculinity.
I'm sorry for cutting in again, but how dare this guy, this effeminate dude, come up here and talk about what really masculinity is, what the truth of masculinity is? I mean, does this guy intimidate anybody? Does this guy seem like a leader that you would want to follow into battle or to allow you to lead you on an expedition into the mountains or just whatever? Like, seriously, you're going to take gym instructions from this dude? Do you feel like you can learn shooting lessons from this guy? Like, what is it about this guy that tells you that he is the example of masculinity to be talking about, like to be preaching to you about? It's unexplainable other than the fact that they're just projecting lies to you and they're trying to muddy the definition of what true masculinity is, because let's be real, this party, the Democratic Party, they hate masculine men, and they can't define what a woman is, by the way. So it's just ironic that these people are going to come up here and try to be the dictators of truth. It's pathetic. It's so pathetic.
That it really, the juxtaposition was hilarious to me. Wow, you guys got that picture fast. Holy moly. So I come from comedy, and comedy comes from juxtaposition, and so to me, I was just riffing with my friends thinking, wouldn't it be funny if you took these ideas of like, so macho, you got to tell everyone how macho you are all the time, masculinity, and what I feel is a more real version of what it means to be a man where, you cry at a rom-com, you braid your daughter's hair, you go pick up tampons from the store if someone needs like, who cares? And so to me, putting those together, but treating it like as if it's a real, rugged man political ad would be funny. And I still think it was funny.
Well, he thinks it was funny anyway. So he's explaining the joke, which is always a great sign. Comedy is about juxtaposition, says Jacob Reed. You get it? He's juxtaposing the idea of a stereotypically rugged man with things that aren't stereotypically masculine. And it's funny because those two things are being juxtaposed. That's comedy, as explained by the former director of Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian who himself has not told a joke in 20 years. In addition to not actually being funny, this guy's also not very smart because without realizing it, he proved the point that I made, that many of us made when last week. On the left, to be a real man, according to them, it means simply playing second fiddle to women. Any man who submits and assumes a subservient role is automatically a role model for all men in their view. So go fetch the tampons and braid some hair, and then you're a real man. That's the idea. This is a debased and matriarchal view of men that fails to resonate with any man, aside from the most effeminate and testosterone depleted. It is a vision of masculinity that appeals almost entirely to liberal feminist women and no one else.
And it certainly doesn't appeal to hunters, as a reference back to the hat at the beginning.
Increasingly, it's becoming apparent that nobody in the Kamala Harris campaign has ever spoken to a man who is normal and well-adjusted. That's the only explanation for why the campaign voluntarily uploaded this footage of Tim Walz going pheasant hunting the other day. They must have thought this would be a slam dunk. After all, Walz was bringing his own gun to go for the hunt. So presumably his handlers assumed that he would know how to load it for the cameras. But that assumption turned out to be very incorrect. Watch.
That's my theory, and it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
Doesn't know the name of it.
So it kind of looks like it's his first time ever handling a firearm of any kind. It definitely does not look like a guy who's familiar in any way with the firearms that he supposedly owns. As Larry Taunton put it, it looks like Tim Walz stepped out of an LL Bean catalog, eager to impress everybody with his hunting prowess, and everybody can see through it in about 10 seconds. Now, a lot of people are comparing this to Michael Dukakis' decision to ride around in an Abrams tank, decked out in a helmet and all of that. That stunt was supposed to make Dukakis look strong on national defense, but it ended up making him look silly, you know. But really, it's not a fair comparison because Dukakis, for all his faults, never claimed to be a tank commander. He never said that he was an expert on tanks or someone who drove tanks all the time. By contrast, as you heard from CNN at the top of his segment, Tim Walz has portrayed himself as a hunter. That's why they sell the Harris-Walz camo hats. And now we're learning that, like every other biographical detail we've been told about Tim Walz, it's apparently a lie. In reality, he didn't serve in Afghanistan, even though he repeatedly suggested otherwise. He's not actually afraid of spicy food, as he told Kamala Harris. He wasn't in Hong Kong during the massacre at Tiananmen Square, and now we learned that he has no idea how to hold a firearm. Now think about how desperate the campaign would have to be in order to send Walz out there with that shotgun. It's not just the fact that they decided to stage a corny photo op, it's the fact that they apparently didn't do any kind of preparation beforehand, even basic stuff like making sure he wouldn't make a fool out of himself. And then no one stopped this video from being released. In fact, the campaign began promoting it. It reminds you of all those staged photos of politicians standing over a grill on July 4th, wearing a spotless apron with creases still in it, holding a shiny spatula that an intern just bought from Lowe's 15 minutes ago. And you compare this to Donald Trump's viral video with a professional golfer a few days ago, and that racked up more than 10 million views because it was authentic. Everybody watching the video could tell that Trump loves golfing. He didn't struggle to hold his clubs. It obviously wasn't his first time on the golf course. It was evident that he loved the sport and everything about it, and he was good too. In fact, he started hitting a few drives that were better than the professional golfers. And by the way, would Donald Trump do any better handling a firearm? Probably not. But he's not pretending. That's the point. He's not pretending to be someone he's not. And if you want to appeal to voters, especially male voters, then authenticity is very important.
And that reminds me of the Kid Rock quote from like 25 years ago. But if it looks good, you'll see it. If it sounds good, you'll hear it. If it's marketed right, you'll buy it. But if it's real, you'll feel it. And that's Donald Trump right now. And that's also the Kamala Harris campaign. They are completely fake. You don't feel the Kamala Harris campaign being real at all. As a matter of fact, they're a bunch of frauds. And like what Matt Walsh just said there, it's completely ridiculous. And it's an example of how ill-prepared and incapable these people will be in running a country, considering the fact that they sent Tim Walz out there with a shotgun that he couldn't even load. You know, granted, he did at least know the type of shotgun it was, unlike Kamala Harris, who said that she owns a Glock. But when you actually realize that Glocks are a manufacturer and there's a bunch of different models, a person that owns a Glock would say that they own a Glock 27, it's a subcompact 40 caliber, or, you know, whatever it is, right? And she didn't do that. She basically was lying, saying that she's a gun owner, and that's why they sent Tim Walz out to do this, was because Kamala Harris said that they both own guns. So they're trying to prove it, right? I mean, his gun was shiny right there. He didn't know the name of the butt stock that goes up against your shoulder. He just said they got this thing on there because old people's shoulders, because it's easier on old people's shoulders, thus admitting that he's old, which, you know, is another, you know, admission of guilt, considering this is supposed to be turning over a new leaf to the younger generation, according to Joe Biden. But, you know, if you're too old to shoot a shotgun and worry about your shoulder getting hurt, then maybe you're too old. I don't know. I'm just saying, you know, no offense, but you're definitely not the the younger generation that I believe that we need to lead this country. But one thing's for sure, the Democratic Party is completely incapable, ill-equipped, and unaware that their attempts right now to try to win voters over are a complete example of why they should lose this election. Okay, the Democratic Party cannot lead with this leadership team that they're putting forth right now. And I don't believe that any of them across the party would actually be capable of running the United States the way that we need it to be ran, which is why it's so important with less than 3 weeks left to this election that we make sure that we're registered, we make sure that we're aware of our voting location. And I just got my sample ballot in the mail today. And so I'm going to look through that. I'm going to look at all the candidates, and I'm going to make sure I know who I'm voting for in my local elections. And of course, I'm going to vote for Republicans down ticket, just solely based on the fact that Democrats are going to try to hold up and disturb Donald Trump when he wins, just like they did the first 4 years that he was president. They played politics. They focused on trying to stop Donald Trump with bullcrap impeachments, the Russian collusion investigation, everything and anything and everything, right? And this time we just need him to be able to run the government properly, unimpeded by a Democrat House or Congress. We just need Republicans across the board, and hopefully this time around these Republicans will work with Donald Trump rather than against him and allow him to get the things done for the American people that we need done, because that is what Donald Trump is going to do. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, stop in on Saturdays, 8 to 10 p.m., say hi, and I'll see you guys in the next one.